2021, 2022, Ohio State fans, I know you're focused on both at the same time. It's a big recruiting summer headed our way, and this is Buckeyes Live here with, of course, from the top, got Kevin Noon from Buckeye Grove, Steve Hillwagon, Bucknuts 247 Sports, and Tony Gerdeman from Buckeye Scoop. How are we all doing today?
Good.
Well,
are you guys as happy for this weather as I am? This is what I live for all winter.
Well, we're pushing 80 here today, and that's great here in Columbus, obviously.
I think it's going to be 56 and raining on Saturday, so not so great. Thanks for bringing it up.
Okay. Well, for right now, we're focused in the moment, Tony. Let's not be speculating about what could happen. Oh, we need to speculate on where particular high school athletes are going to choose to go to college and play football. So, Kevin, you're going to lead us on this, since I know that you are energized and full of fuel and ready to talk about this. Since that
I'm full of something. I don't know. I don't know if it's fuel.
We know that. I mean, like extra this week. There's something additional to what you're full of on a regular basis. But I know that you're certainly not talked out about this, that you're just rearing and ready to go to run down Ohio State visits coming up over the next couple weekends.
Yeah, I mean, this first weekend that's going to be coming up, the June 4th weekend, not to be confused with Memorial Day weekend that's coming up, but that'll be the big weekend in terms of the official visits for the commits. All but I think 2 or 3 of them will be in that weekend. So, I mean, you'll have guys like QB1 Quinn Ewers, Keon Graves, Bennett Christian, Gabe Power, CJ Hicks. I can go on and on. If you're not familiar with what the recruiting class is, then we need to probably double back. But this first weekend is going to be very important in terms of some uncommitted players. You've got a couple of safeties coming in. You certainly have the big name in Zion Branch coming out of Bishop Gorman in Las Vegas. You got a couple of linemen with Zach Rice, the offensive lineman out of, I believe, Virginia. You got Nick James. A name to keep an eye on for sure is Emil Wagner out of Huber Heights, Wayne, an offensive tackle out of the state of Ohio. I certainly could put him on commitment watch in terms of somebody that I think once everybody gets a chance, because a lot of these kids haven't been on campus for none of them have been on campus for 18 months, and a lot can change during that period of time. But I think that, he's somebody who could pop pretty quickly. You got cornerback Toriano Pride, Xavier Nwankpa, the safety out of Iowa, who a lot of the commits act as if he's already part of the class. But, until they commit, you don't know. Omari Abor, really wraps up a really strong weekend. But they're going to have big weekends each weekend, 4th, 11th, 18th, and 25th, and then you're going to be throwing some kids in the middle. So at risk of me talking for the first 10 minutes of the show, I'll turn it over to the other guys, but I certainly can jump in with some of the other big names on the later weekends.
Tony, who stands out when you look at these lists? And I'm going to ask all of you to chime in regards to if you've got a pretty decent feel on, okay, here's the big leans that are really strong Ohio State. Here's the guys that are definitely on the fence. And then here are the guys that are definite reaches that they're taking a shot at, but it doesn't look good. And I'm going to think that most of the time you guys are going to throw up your hands and say, they haven't visited anywhere. It's all a bunch of guessing game at this point, because they have held their cards close to the vest, and understandably so.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about the first batch of visits is it's half commits, half uncommits. And a lot of times when you get that sort of thing together, guys get fired up to then commit. They kind of get sucked into all of the camaraderie and the rah-rah nature of it. And you've got Quinn Ewers there, the leader of the class, basically the leader of the future of the program. And once you kind of get that, all those juices flowing, it might get a couple of guys to commit. We'll see there, like Kevin was saying, Xavier Nwankpa, who is like close friends with Keon Graves, So there's something there to keep an eye on. But I do wonder how many. I would be pretty surprised if they leave that weekend without a commit by like Monday or so. I don't know who it would be. It's just you got to figure something is going to happen. It's the first visits, first weekend of visiting in forever. And so, guys have been wanting to commit, but they just want to make sure this is going to be an opportunity for them to make sure.
Yeah, I look at it, and the first weekend, I mean, at least as I look at the 24/7 database, Zach Rice, offensive tackle from Lynchburg, Virginia, the number 5 overall player in the country, and he's supposed to be visiting. Amari Abor from Duncanville, Texas, a defensive lineman, 6'4", 240 pounds. He's ranked as the number 21 player in the country. He's going to be visiting. And, of course, as I said, Quinn Ewers will also be visiting from Southlake, Texas, who is the number 1 overall player in the country and an Ohio State commitment. So he's going to be coming up with another guy from Texas, as we say there, as well as Caleb Burton, the outstanding wide receiver from Lake Travis High School in Austin, Texas. It will be a definite Texas flavor of that weekend. And Zion Branch, Las Vegas, Nevada, number 49 player in the country. So you've got 3 guys who are not committed in the top 50 in the country who are coming in addition to 4 guys in the top 50 who are committed. Quinn Ewers, number 1, CJ Hicks, the linebacker, number 17. Burton, we talked about, number 35, and Gabe Powers, the linebacker from Marysville, who's at number 43. You're going to have a total of 7 of the nation's top 50 players on campus that first weekend, June 4th. You want to talk about a star-studded group. I don't know that Ohio State's ever had a weekend with that many top 50 players on campus at one time, but it kind of speaks to how everything's backed up at this point. Everybody's ready to get out of the house and go see colleges and the job that Ohio State coaches have done. So I'm interested to see how it goes. I agree with the guys. There'll probably be a commitment or 2. I don't know if it'll come from one of those top 50 players per se. I think they're going to want to take some other visits during this process. But you got to be excited if you're an Ohio State fan that they've got the right guys coming to campus, the right guys coming to campus to recruit the right guys that are coming to campus. And I just that again, this machine that Ryan Day, Urban Meyer built it, Ryan Day took it over. Mark Pantoni has been kind of the conductor behind the scenes the whole time. Assistant coaches kind of drive this engine as well. It's all coming together at one point, and they're about to hit 5th gear again, it appears like, and finish off this 2021 class in style. Rather, I guess it'd be the 2022 class with some great players. And my guess is they're going to get another 4 or 5 guys from the top 100 before it's all said and done.
Hey, everybody out there. This is Exceptional Ohio State Talk that we bring you every Wednesday, typically every Wednesday. So this is not a scheduling change that's permanent. Wednesday at 2 o'clock Eastern time is our standard time. So just this is a one-off. So this is another reason why you need to subscribe, hit the bell for the notifications. That way you know when we're going live. So every Wednesday at 2 o'clock Eastern time. And we would love to get rolling as we head toward August and into the season itself. So you can help us do that by hitting the like button, going out on social media, letting people know that we're here every Wednesday at 2 o'clock Eastern time, typically, and that we're here at some point every week with these guys: Kevin Noon, Buckeye Grove, Tony Gerdeman, Buckeye Scoop, Steve Hellwagon from Bucknuts. These guys are exceptional. They make it happen. I just come on here and just start the show off and then listen to them, and I get educated, and it's always a great time talking Ohio State football. So, Kevin, I'm going to go to you first, not to bypass the other 2, but you're kind of the guy that's at the forefront of recruiting.
Yeah, let's just bypass the other 2.
Well, we can do that. Kevin and I are launching our new show every Friday. Anyway, but you've had your most recent trip, I believe, to Florida, and you get a firsthand conversation with a lot of these guys. What are just some of the interesting nuggets of what And I know each individual is different, but just in general of what's important to them, what are some of the things that may surprise you or seems to be a trend in these conversations about what they talk about, what they like, what turns them on, what turns them off in regards to these visits and these programs?
Well, the thing is,
Tony,
is going in on the front end, none of these guys have taken visits really, so I don't think they know what to expect when it comes to the visit. So, you hear the same thing. Oh, I want somewhere. It's a 40-year decision, not a 4-year decision. It's a business decision. It can't be about who I grew up rooting for, because if it were that, Ohio State would have already landed a commitment from offensive tackle Cam Dewberry out of Houston. But, I think he's going to stay home because, once you put your feet to the fire, it's a little bit further, a little more difficult to take that further trip out. Ohio State certainly has an opportunity there, but I wouldn't put them in the forefront. I just think that, I think especially if we're talking about recruiting Florida, just how involved Tony Alford is. Tony Alford, is your running back coach, but he also, Ohio State certainly splits it up between territory and position, and Florida's his territory. And we went up both coasts of Florida, and everybody just talked up Tony Alford. I had one high school coach that said that, whenever Tony gets an opportunity to have his own program, to be a head coach, that he's just going to knock it out of the park. He's going to be fantastic. So just a lot of talking up there. But, as we kind of go through, the rest of the visit weekend, and I'll even say this more is I'm putting the over-under at about 4.5 commits, but that's between 22 and 23. I think we could see the first Ohio State 23 commit happen pretty soon with Joshua Padilla, a lineman out of the greater Cincinnati-Dayton area. I think he's somebody that could make a move this month. I certainly think they could probably end up with a couple of guys from that class. I put 4.5. I think it probably will be a little bit higher than that, but you get in trouble when you sit there and you do that. And we're sitting here like June 28th, and everybody's like, "Well, we're sitting at 2. What the hell, Noon? What, you said we were going to get 5?" Well, you just don't know at that point. One story that I'll be watching will be toward the end of the month. Teammates Joshua White and Kristen Miller out of Cedar Grove High School outside of Atlanta. That would be just a tremendous coup for Ohio State to pick up 2 talented defensive linemen like that. We talk so much in this industry about the package deal. Oh, I want to play with my teammate at the next level. Do they happen? Sure. Are they truly package deals when they happen? No, not really. Everybody's got to come to their own decision. This duo is probably one of the closer things that I've seen to guys talking about, we are absolutely going to the same place. And if you're an Ohio State fan, really the only major school that overlaps the two in terms of who they both have interest in is Ohio State. And that's the same school that produced Antoine Jackson as well. So there are going to be so many interesting stories that I could go on and on. But I certainly have my short list of names of guys that I think will probably, if they don't commit by the end of June, they will commit before the start of their senior seasons.
Keonta Goodwin is the 6th rated offensive tackle in the country. He's a top 50 rated player generally in the composite out of Charlestown, Indiana. The Rod Favre is asking, will the staff still recruit Goodwin, try to flip him from Kentucky?
Yeah, I don't think they're going to stop. I think they had him. They thought they had him for a long time until they didn't. So I think if they can get him on campus, then all bets are off at that point, and then it becomes a Kentucky versus Ohio State thing. And yes, Kentucky's actually done pretty well in some competitions with Ohio State on the recruiting trail, especially on the offensive line. But I think COVID kind of helped that one. Kevin can confirm that for me, where he didn't have any visits, and so Kentucky seemed like the place to be now that the visits are open. I'm guessing Kentucky is a little nervous, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're still confident in their chances with Goodwin.
Yeah, and you got to remember on the flip side, Kentucky's trying to flip Tegrit Shabola. So, as I said on another show that I just recently done, Ohio State fans are all about going in and flipping kids from other schools, but how dare you come in and try and flip our kids? So, you have to play defense as much as you're playing offense. So Kentucky really believes they have a shot at flipping Shabola. I mean, do they have a shot? Maybe. I mean, he announced that he was going to take an official to Kentucky, backed off of that, said he's 100% committed to Ohio State. But, is anybody ever really 100% anything? I don't know about that. But Ohio State will continue to work on Goodwin, but I'm not going to put a lot into that one and say that that's something that's likely to happen. And that's not going to be from lack of desire or lack of effort. Ohio State certainly really likes Goodwin, but you got to remember just geography. He's a lot closer to Kentucky really from where he is than he is to Columbus. And, just like Jigger Burton, who actually was from Lexington, committing to Kentucky over Alabama and Ohio State last year. They're just going to be kids that are just going to want to do that. And, I think Goodwin may be another one cut from the same cloth.
Guy I look at is Emil Wagner, Huber Heights, Wayne. I know you touched on him a little bit ago. Ranked number 109 nationally, number 10 offensive tackle, number 3 player in Ohio for 2022. That's an important guy, I think. I think they need to rebuild some numbers on the offensive line. A couple guys who have left the program here in recent months. So those numbers are still very good. I mean, they've got about 15 scholarship linemen in the fold, but they do have a few seniors who will probably drop off after the season. And Emil Wagner, to me, is a guy 6'6". Our database has him at 250, but my guess is he's going to be 270, 280 by the start of his season coming up, and would certainly be big enough by that time. He's going to have a busy month, it looks like. Our database has him going to Ohio State this June 4th, the following weekend, and then Kentucky June the 11th, Notre Dame June 18th, and Penn State June 25th. Those 4 and Stanford all seem to be really high on his list, and it'll come down obviously to how he does in the on those visits where he really fits in the best. And Vince Morrow is obviously trying to recruit him for Kentucky. Certainly Marcus Freeman, a former guy, from the Dayton area, probably recruiting him for Notre Dame. So there's going to be some heavy competition, I think, for Ohio State to try and get Emil Wagner in the fold.
I wouldn't be surprised not to be that guy. I wouldn't be surprised to see him commit before he makes all those visits. I really think that Ohio State's got that one locked down. I think he might make it all the way to it. I mean, he could make it all the way to that Penn State visit. We have in the rivals database just the top 4: Ohio State, Penn State, Notre Dame, and Kentucky. You got to remember this: C.J. Hicks is in his ear right now and has been in his ear like big time. And it would really surprise me to see a kid that Ohio State covets, a top 200 type of kid, get away from within the state, especially a very pro Ohio State part of the state. This isn't necessarily one of those Toledo kids that might actually be a little bit closer to Michigan or Michigan State than to Columbus or whatever. So, if I'm putting on my short list of guys that I think will 100% be a Buckeye within the next 60 days, Wagner's 1 or 2 on that list.
Ohio State Buckeyes talk here every Wednesday. Yes, it's Thursday. That's why you subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell for the notifications. We got Tony Gerdeman on the line from Buckeyes Scoop. Kevin Noon, Buckeye Grove, and of course Steve Hellwagon from Bucknuts 247 Sports. Before we continue, Kevin, where else can we find you? What podcast availability do you have? Let people know where you're at.
Yeah, we do the Buckeye Grove Instant Access podcast, or BIA, and we're on all of your standard podcasting outlets there. We also occasionally do a video show that's either on the Buckeye Grove YouTube or Facebook live pages. We do that, and you can also find me on social media at Kevin_Noon, or you can find Buckeye Grove at OSU at Rivals, and that's AT on that second one. We're not throwing a lot of @ signs in there because Twitter wouldn't figure that out.
Tony.
Find me at BuckeyeScoop.com. Yesterday, I was on our Ask the Insiders message board relaying all of my findings from Ohio State's 2,777 pages of emails and texts that were released from the Freedom of Information Act requests that we made, I think, last summer. So that's where I spent my day yesterday, relaying all of that stuff. I'm still trying to process. My brain has finally stopped smoking a little bit. So there's that. You can also find me on Twitter at Tony Gerdeman, and I have a podcast with Tom Moore called the Buckeye Weekly Podcast, which is twice a week. So twice as much for your money.
Now, Steve's always getting pulled in by these big name platforms. I'm surprised he's got time for us and me in particular here. Steve,
Really
what's
funny.
going on?
Nothing big, really. Excuse me. Obviously, I hope everybody has a great and safe Memorial Day weekend and a great chance of the 3-day weekend, everybody to kind of recharge. And I know that we all will because, there'll be whatever it is, 5 or 6 camp dates coming up in June. And so looking forward to that and doing what we can. Bill Kurlick covers most of the recruiting on our website, Bucknuts, but I'll probably be lending a helping hand here and there and doing the best. And I'm helping with some basketball stuff right now as well. So plenty of stuff going on, even though it is the beginning of the summer.
Steve has helped us considerably here, has the other two have as well, certainly in building our channels and promoting our Ohio State content here. So we appreciate all three. Steve, thank you so much for posting these video segments on Bucknuts. Tony, Kevin, you can take a little coffee break here. Cheryl specifically asking Steve leads in specific question asks. That's all there is to it. I think the three of us just sometimes just show up just to fill in the gaps. But Steve, Coach Ryan Day, any particular players in the portal that they could be looking at?
I haven't heard of anything like that other than as the guy we've talked about a little bit here from USC, AI Tote, or I don't know how you pronounce his name, the linebacker who they recruited out of Nevada a few years ago. He's the only one. They've got a couple scholarship spots if they wanted to add a player or two at this point, but I just don't sense that there is a position of need right now for Ohio State in the portal, other than linebacker perhaps. And obviously we know they wanted Henry To'o from Tennessee, who ended up going to Alabama. So there was a professed need there in the coaches' minds for them to push for that player. And now, I haven't heard Tote has made any decisions or if he's going to take some official visits here in the month of June, perhaps. Maybe he'll sneak out to Columbus and get reacquainted with the coaches and take it from there. Honestly, no, haven't heard a whole lot about transfer portal in terms of football, other than that one player from USC.
I've got to be careful about what I say. Kevin took me literally. He's gone. Who knows when we'll be able to reel him back. All right. Steve has released his depth charts for both the offense and the defense, and you can catch those, of course, at Bucknuts 247 Sports, where you can go line by line and check out Steve's projected depth charts, offense and defense. You can go back to our previous Ohio State live shows over the past 2 weeks in which we outlined the offense and started in on the defense as well. Kevin back just in time to get his in-depth knowledge on the linebacking core. So, Steve, why don't you run us down in regards to your depth chart at linebacker?
Yeah, linebacker to me is kind of an interesting position. I mean, you take Tuff Borland, Baron Browning, Pete Werner, and also Justin Hilliard out of the mix, and those four guys dominated those three positions at the linebacker. You have the will linebacker. It looks like it's Taraja Mitchell coming out of the spring with Tommy Eichenberg and Reed Carrico right there as well. A lot of these guys are cross-training between will and middle linebackers, so you could see them pop up at either position at any moment. The middle linebacker, we had Dallas Gant, a senior, even though he didn't go through spring drills. Al Washington really sang his praises quite a bit. And regardless of the fact that he went through spring ball, that he'd be his guy probably in the middle with Kayvon Pope or Cody Simon, the sophomore, right behind him. And then the third linebacker position's always been the Sam, but it may be skewing more toward the bullet. That's Craig Young, a sophomore, or Ronnie Hickman, a sophomore. They're two different kinds of players. Young, a big, rangy guy. Hickman, more of a smaller safety type guy. I'm open to suggestion, guys, because we didn't get to see a whole lot of scrimmaging or anything like that, how they're going to go about this. But to me, those are the guys who are going to play. And obviously, if they were to get Gay Tote, or however you pronounce it, maybe he would shake this up. God Tote, however it is pronounced, but he would be in this mix. And, I guess just take from there. They had some early enrolling freshmen. Well, they've also got Mitchell Melton, a redshirt freshman who's involved there, and a walk-on, Kate Kaczynski, as well. So that's kind of the group. I think Reed Carrico is the only guy, a new guy this year. So there you go.
Now, here I thought, Steve, that those depth charts that you put together went straight to Ryan Day and staff. I thought that there was like a direct line there.
No, not necessarily. A lot of it is just from what we get to see with our own two eyes. In that spring game, you can tell who the coaches were putting out on the field in various situations to start a series and to begin a scrimmage or to begin a half, and just to kind of get an idea who we think they think are their top guys. All you can do is kind of read the tea leaves. And so that's what I did. To me, it doesn't matter what the names are. The thing that matters is production, and that's stopping the run, it being less than a liability in coverage, which, I think those are two huge hurdles, I think, for this linebacker group to achieve the fall. So I'm interested in seeing how that all works out.
Yeah, I don't really have a strong read on what linebacker is going to look like, because as Steve puts it, with what we see with our two eyes, which is largely stretching. So, and the spring game, with it being thud style, was not necessarily a great indication of what we're going to see. Guys were injured. For half the game, there was Team Buckeye and Team not Buckeye. I don't know. Team Ohio State. I don't remember what they called them. I don't know if I'm walking in right now and saying, okay, we know it's going to be the combination of Gant, Mitchell, and Pope or whatever. They certainly do have high hopes for Court Williams. There are a lot of young guys that seem to be pushing. And then, of course, there is the question about Palaie Naoteote and whether or not he's going to be part of the team or not. I mean, I know that a lot of people not hearing as much right now think that ship has sailed, but they're in the Maymester. It's not like he's going to be able to show up on campus tomorrow and start doing anything. There's not, the only thing he'd be able to do is be able to get into the Woody and lift weights anyway, because you're not in a traditional supervised session in terms of where they are on the football calendar. So don't use the lack of news as some sort of harbinger that we're not going to see anything happen on that front. I'm still pretty bullish that something is going to happen, but yeah, I think there's certain positions that lend themselves a lot better, like offensive line. I think we all have a pretty good idea, save, what some of the twos may look like there. We may even have a better idea at quarterback, even though that's wide open and theoretically of what that is. But linebacker truly is the one position that I feel that nobody really knows for sure. I mean, we feel guys like Mitchell and Gant seem to be there, but what are they going to look like structurally? I mean, is it going to be more of the bullet? I mean, we've been sold that bill of goods before, only to not have it happen. But Pete Warner's not walking through that door, so we'll see.
And there are a couple of issues there with the linebackers. One is that Dallas Gant was hurt this spring. He was supposed to be the guy that takes over at middle linebacker, so you didn't get an opportunity to see that happen. And he was one of a number of guys who were hurt. Mitchell Melton may be out for the season. It sounded like they haven't come out and said that. They just said he has suffered a significant injury, so he's probably already written off this year. And so when you go into the spring game, which was the most we had gotten to see from anybody they only had, I believe, 5 healthy scholarship linebackers. They had a backup long snapper playing linebacker in Rowan McCullough at times. So the idea that you guys are exactly right. We don't know exactly what we're going to see because in that spring game, they played the bullet. Part of the reason for that may have been they only had 5 linebackers, so they had to play a bullet, a nickel package, basically, because they didn't have enough Sams or they didn't have any Sams. However, when we did see stuff in the spring or from the videos that Ohio State would tweet, all of their linebackers were essentially compacted inside with the Will and the Mike, and the guys like the bullets, like Craig Young, were with the safeties. So there's hints there that they're going completely to the bullet. But then when we talked to Kerry Combs after the season, he kind of poo-pooed that because that's what coaches do. Anytime you think you're up to speed with them or that you've caught on, they want to make sure that no, you don't know what we're doing. And then we find out maybe later on that we did or that we didn't. That's not really here nor there. But it feels to me like it's going to be, there's still going to have to be a Sam, an outside linebacker. And I go back to the way Michigan always did it, where the Viper, their bullet, plays on regular downs, and the Sam would kind of come in on short yardage stuff like an actual linebacker. And I think maybe that's what Ohio State will do. Who that Sam will be, I don't know that we even know. Kayvon Pope has been a Sam for the past 2 years, but it was on the inside this year. And so there's still a lot of questions to be answered. And, I'm guessing we won't get to see much in the fall. So I don't know how much we'll be able to answer. We'll probably answer questions via Twitter videos and stuff like that more than what we get to see in practice.
All right. And now, Steve, if you can sort through this secondary, wow, give it a go. Let me ask this question, because I've been wanting to ask this question for like 3 weeks, and I've got only about 3 more months to ask it. So I guess I don't have to ask it right now, but I've already started. Can you guys think of a time in which there was less productivity, less confidence in a secondary, meaning that, okay, is Sevyn Banks, is he the best player or the most proven player in the secondary right now? Is that pretty reasonable to say that?
Well, that's not coming off injury. I mean, where does Cameron Brown fit into the situation?
When is the last time that we had a situation where we looked at the secondary and really there were no certain all Big Ten type players coming back? I can't remember when this was. This secondary is still just a big wild card.
Maybe 2016, which happened to be maybe there ended up being the best secondary in Ohio State history, where I think the only returning starter was Garyon Conley, and maybe Damon Webb was a starting strong safety there. But you bring in Malik Hooker, and his first year as a starter was amazing, and you had Denzel Ward and Marshawn Lattimore were 2 other guys added into that mix. Ward was a freshman in 2015, and Lattimore, I believe, was maybe a nickelback at times when he wasn't hurt. So like you had some new guys that were thrown in there, and they all performed spectacularly. I don't know that I could put this 2021 group up there with that, though.
Yeah, I agree with what he's saying. There have been some times when they've been decimated by guys leaving for the NFL, and graduating and those kind of things, and you've just kind of been scratching your head like, okay, who's next up on this list? But at the same time, you always thought, well, man, we've at least seen some snippets of what these guys can do as backups, and we know they're going to be, outstanding players as they move into starting roles. We don't really know that this year. And, Sevyn Banks is back, and he started last year. Marcus Williamson is back as the slot corner, but he could very easily lose that job, to Lathan Ransom or, somebody else. going into the start of the season. So I think that's definitely within the realm of possibility. They got to be hoping above hope that Cameron Brown comes back. I mean, as I kind of looked at it, I had Banks, Brown, and Williamson as the starters, and Williamson was kind of bracketed with Ransom at that third spot. And then I had Tyreek Johnson in my second team. And when my first draft of this came out, and he left the team. So then I put Ryan Watts in there, Cameron Martinez. Well, John Cavazos was expected to make a move, and he really wasn't available much in the spring. And then I had DeMario McCall, a super senior who moved over from wide receiver, and Denzel Burke, a true freshman who was there this spring. I had them kind of in the running as well, third team, I guess. And then Jordan Hancock and Ja'Kalen Johnson are coming in this summer. So that kind of ties up the cornerback position. And then over at safety, Josh Proctor, returning starter. Okay, not great, not bad. Okay, probably going to be much better in the second year with Marcus Hooker, who was suspended this spring because of the DUI arrest, and Bryson Shaw kind of bracketed behind him. Shaw's a sophomore. We still don't know enough about Court Williams, redshirt freshman. He's been banged up. Jansen Dunn was a true freshman. He was there. And then a couple of incoming freshmen, Jalen Johnson and Andre Turrentine, coming in as well. So, I think it's a lot of unknowns, but kind of rebuilt the depth, I guess, with some of those young guys coming in. So many young players that they need to sink their teeth into and get some seasoning into. And the production, as we said with the linebacker group, has to be 100% better, or the defense could again be a liability, I think, in 2021.
I know, talking to Ryan Day this spring, they're much more comfortable with their numbers and their guys than they were at the end of the last season and through much of the season, when the guys were too young and they didn't have the opportunity to practice and get better. That's not been the case this year, so that has certainly helped. I know they feel good about Ryan Watts, but he's a rarity. He's a 6'3" corner, a 6'3", 200-pound corner. So let's see if he can actually do that. And if he can, then he's one of about, 10 in the history of football maybe that can do it. So we'll see. Sevyn Banks, I think he's going to be fine. Just based on the history of, if you're a starting cornerback at Ohio State, you're generally fine. And in year two, you're even better. And I still go back to the times when Buckeye fans were upset that Damon Arnett returned. And he went pro and then decided to come back, and Buckeye fans were upset, and he turned himself into an outstanding corner in his final season and a first rounder. And so, yeah, the second corner, I have no idea what to expect from Cameron Brown coming back from the Achilles. I don't think you can expect him to be 100%. And if he is, that's great, and you fooled us. But we've seen, I guess, based on, and this is a terrible comparison, I guess, but maybe based on what we've seen from Tough Borland and Master Teague coming back from that injury, you're better a year after and the year after that. And so now you're asking Cam Brown to be, before he was injured, he was arguably the fastest player on the team. Where is he now in terms of not even just the speed, but the turning and the cutting and the keeping up with guys? He was in the slot last year, and can he still do that, or is he an outside guy? And then can Josh Proctor hold up as the free safety? It was an underrated situation last year, replacing Jordan Fuller. I don't think people realized how important it was to find somebody who could do that. And you saw that they didn't have that last year. And it's not a coincidence that the Ohio State pass defense was bad last year, because they didn't have somebody like Jordan Fuller. Of course, they didn't have somebody like Chase Young either, but they had no last line of defense to handle that. And Josh Proctor has played that position, didn't do much of it last year. Can he handle that this year? I think they can do the other stuff well enough. I just, and this is what they brought Josh Proctor to Ohio State to be. And he has been compared to Malik Hooker by Damon Arnett, for instance. And will he be that this year? I don't think you need to be Malik Hooker. I keep saying, if you could just be somewhere between Jordan Fuller and Malik Hooker, that's plenty good. And if Jordan Fuller is the low side of that, if you can just reach that ceiling floor, then I think this defense will be fine, and you can find other pieces to handle the slot corner / cover safety, which I know they love Lathan Ransom. So there's more options, and I still won't be surprised, Kevin, if Ja'Kalen Johnson or Jordan Hancock get some starts this year at corner.
Yeah, I'm a big supporter of J.K. Johnson, Ja'Kalen Johnson, getting a lot of snaps this year. Not so much because other guys aren't worthy of it. I just think he's really good, and I think that once he gets the opportunity to get into the system and show some things, I think that talent is talent, and it's going to be hard to keep him off the field. I'll save everybody from me going back and reciting the same names that Steve and Tony have gone through and said, what's going to make the secondary better is going to be the defensive line getting there 0.3, 0.5 seconds quicker, doing some things there that, I don't mean to lay this at the feet of the defensive line because that's not fair, but probably not as disruptive of a defensive line as we've seen in a lot of these past years too. We look at 16 when they bring in, a lot of young guys or whatever, or guys that hadn't had an opportunity. Marshawn Lattimore, when you talk about him, when he came out of Glenville, I thought Eric Smith, his teammate, I thought Eric Smith was going to be the guy and not Lattimore. But I think if you get a little bit more out of the defensive line, that always is going to make the secondary better. Because if you let guys run around out there indefinitely because you can't get to the quarterback, I don't care if you've got Deion Sanders and Leon Sandcastle out there for those who enjoy those commercials. It doesn't matter. Guys are eventually going to get open. I understand that you do have coverage sacks, but a lot of times, a lot of that is more scheming than just being able to lock guys down and whatnot. So if that defensive line play just takes even a 15, 20% increase, we're not even going to be talking about the defensive backfield as a concern. But until then, I know people are plenty concerned.
Yeah, and there's a lot of talk about that this spring, just getting to the quarterback. Just the little things they can do to get that split second out of them. And I know expectations are very high for Tyreek Smith and Zach Harrison. Kevin, you mentioned Eric Smith. I thought I go back to that all of the Army game that year. He was expected to be a safety at Ohio State. They throw him in at corner, and he shuts everybody down. Was better than Marshawn Lattimore. Then gets to Ohio State as a future star at safety, but just couldn't stay healthy. And since then, not much has come from Glenville.
No, Glenville's dry. I certainly have heard stories in terms of people will say, oh, Glenville's doing this or Glenville's not doing that. When it was on its decline a little bit, people thought that Glenville wasn't bringing out its best kids to certain camps, and those were the best kids. And, you can really kind of get into whether it's the population shifts or when Teddy got sick and, because a lot of kids from other schools were kind of feeding in there. But I don't think it's as much that because Cleveland's dry right now. There's just not a lot. The top talent from the state of Ohio is coming from Southwest Ohio, from Central Ohio. When Marysville has more kids than Cleveland, it just kind of shows that something's afoot right now. And, could Cleveland bounce back? Sure. You just never know what's going to happen there. But I think that as we're seeing states like North Carolina bounce up, Tennessee, especially the Nashville area, I think some of that's the population shifts of people moving to where the jobs are, where the industry is. And you just have some areas. I'll liken it to Western PA. Western PA used to be as fertile of a recruiting ground as anywhere. We really don't talk about a lot of Western PA kids anymore.
I think you got more guys in Pickerington than you do coming out of Cleveland.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I can't go anywhere without seeing somebody's like, oh, that guy obviously plays football. It's ridiculous.
I somehow was lucky enough to pull in Tony Gerdeman, Steve Hellwagon, and Kevin Noon all at different times to talk Ohio State football on our channels here. And then I don't know that they knew what they were getting into, but we threw them all together for this Ohio State talk each and every week. And Tony says, no, he doesn't, but he knows just to automatically show up. I think it's just, he doesn't know any better now. And so we get them all each and every Wednesday at 2:00 Eastern time. I know we're here on Thursday. There are going to be scheduling changes from time to time, so you got to roll with the punches, folks. So please help us do that. Hit the bell for the notifications. That way you know when we're going live. My point is I get these 3 every week, and I would like that to continue. So you can hit the super chat. That's available to you to contribute, or you can contribute more directly. If you understand how YouTube works, contribute more directly by PayPal, Venmo, or Cash App. Just go to MarkRogersTV. If you put on there Buckeyes or Ohio State or this needs to all go to Steve or something like that, then, I'll get the message. But again, just Ohio State or Buckeyes would be fine, and we know where the contribution needs to go. So I hope that all of you understand and appreciate what we've got here each and every week. Kevin delivered the schedule for week 1, which was just released, focused on the Big Ten here. So let's dive into that. We've got, guys, we've got week 0 matchup originally, now a week 1 matchup. I believe that's back to week 1, correct? Illinois and Nebraska playing in Champaign.
I think so. Week 0.
Well, I was going to say, since that release just came out 19 minutes ago, I'm going to assume that it's still considered a week 0. I can't imagine that things have changed in 19 minutes.
Okay.
I thought that game wasn't that game supposed to be overseas? Wasn't that like an Ireland game?
Ireland.
So I think that's really where the change is in terms of nobody's going overseas for that. But
and this is where Nebraska filled in week 1 with Fordham, I believe. Anyway, regardless, week 0's Nebraska at Illinois, Big Ten game right out of the gate on a Thursday night, Fox. So we can assume, hey, based on that tells us everything we need to know. Fox is putting on Nebraska, Illinois in prime time. Yeah, that's a week 0 game. All right, let's go to, we've got Temple at Rutgers. We've got Ohio State, Minnesota, of course, on the Thursday night. That's a Fox game as well. A number of Big Ten games, probably more in-conference games than we've ever seen before in week 1, including Michigan State at Northwestern, Western Michigan and Michigan, Fordham, there it is, against Nebraska. So the week 0 game is the Illinois-Nebraska game with the Huskers playing Fordham in week 1. Penn State at Wisconsin, week 1 game on Fox. We've got the Big Ten Network hosting Indiana, Iowa. That's a nice-looking game on September 4th as well. That's a 3:30 game. West Virginia, Maryland, that's not a bad matchup. I like to see that out of conference. Those two used to be neighboring rivals that played every year when they were independents. Got Oregon State taking on Purdue, and we've got Texas San Antonio taking on the Illini. Steve, what stands out to you?
I think you had a lot of a lot of stuff here that the Big Ten is going to be heavily featured on national television. I mean, basically all the games are on national TV because Big Ten Network has pretty good clearance nationwide. But I think from Ohio State's standpoint, a couple of things stand out. First of all, the Thursday night game to open the season against Minnesota is kind of unprecedented. When they announced that, the Fox had never done a primetime weeknight college football game in the regular season. I think they had a bowl game a few years ago, like an Indiana Foster Farms bowl game that was kind of on a weeknight in December, but that was a bowl game. This is like their first primetime, at least the first one they announced. As you said, I didn't catch the whole rigmarole around that Illinois-Nebraska game, what's going on with that. But at any rate, to me, that's the first thing, and that one is now set for 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central. So you'll know where you need to be and when you need to be there for that one. But Ohio State also has a couple of later games now set. The Tulsa game is going to be a 3:30 game on Fox Sports 1. Later on, I think that's the 18th of September. And then the October 9th homecoming game against Maryland is set for a noon start, although the TV is not set for that. Who knows how that'll be parsed out later on. But what's remarkable to me is we don't know yet, I say yet, if there'll be some midseason night games. And most particularly at Indiana, at Nebraska, and at home with Penn State, all seem to be pretty good candidates to be primetime games there in that October-November portion of the season, early November portion of the season. So I would look for at least 2 of those 3 games to be selected as night games, I would think, particularly that Penn State game, which I think is the last week in October when Fox would have World Series coverage. So to me, that just seems to kind of, scream out for that. But for whatever reason, the TV partners aren't tipping their hands. And in recent years, they've gone to announcing night games on a 12-day basis. So, that was a new twist that the conference allowed them to weave into the contract. Those used to be set in June or July in previous years, and now in recent years, those have been set at mid-season. So I guess we'll wait and see on that. To me, that's the one remarkable thing is we don't know. We don't know what we don't know yet about those marquee games, so to speak, whether they'll be Fox Nooners or whether ESPN or ABC will grab them for 7:30, which I think at least a couple of them will be.
Yeah, I say I've talked to somebody who led me to believe that Ohio State, Penn State will be a ESPN, ABC designation, and that would lead me to believe that it would be a night game because it's always been kind of a Fox has either the World Series or at least the NL playoffs, and they can't really do a lot with that. So it would not surprise me to see the counter programming happening there. As we're talking about week 1 and the schedule, I'm really excited that I will be back in Columbus in time for that nooner of Penn State and Wisconsin. That's the game that I want to see the most right there. Penn State certainly, they were a team that started off really poorly last year, ended up on a little bit of a winning streak, but they got used to not playing with Micah Parsons because they didn't have Micah Parsons last year. He was a COVID opt-out. But what are certain positions going to look like? Are they going to be able to run the ball? They lost Journey Brown. He was medically DQ'd. Should have Noah Kane back. Wisconsin on the other side. Is Graham Mertz going to look like what Graham Mertz looked like week 1 last year? Playing Illinois or whatever that game was to where he just tore him up? Or is it going to look more like midseason Graham Mertz, which wasn't super remarkable? Are they going to be able to identify a running back? Really excited about that game. I think that Indiana-Iowa game could be a lot of fun too, and that's in that next TV window. But I'll certainly be flipping around to the WVU-Maryland game just because I think we all know a couple of crazy WVU fans, and you just have to have fun with that. And then Maryland being a divisional foe is going to draw my attention as well. And I'll probably be in bed before the UTSA Illinois game at 7:30, just because there's got to be something better on TV than that.
Well, Kevin, I'm shocked and appalled that you would say something bad about that UTSA Illinois game. I love the fact that Ohio State plays on Thursday so that I can be home and watching college football, because it's obviously it's what we all love to do, and don't have to worry about any work that night or that day. And I'll have 2 TVs right in front of me and looking forward to that noon game, as Kevin said, but I'll also have Western Michigan at Michigan on. And then the 3:30 with Indiana, Iowa, I think is fantastically interesting to see if Indiana can get a pretty big road win and continue to assert themselves as a Big Ten East contender. I'll be interested to see what Talia Tagovailoa looks like at Maryland, how he does against West Virginia. That's a Big 12 defense, so you got to take him seriously. And then I do like the palate cleanser of UTSA at Illinois if you consider a glass full of sand as a palate cleanser. I mean, it does get the job done. It will erase your taste buds, and then you can start new. However, I may be instead at 7:30 watching Georgia and Clemson. I'm not sure yet. I'll have to decide when the time comes.
Well, I mean, you do need to sit there. I mean, we do want to see what Brett Bielema looks like here week 1 of the season, other than fat. I said it. I don't care. I'm fat. It's my word. I can use it.
I'm going to give myself a challenge of posting a video giving compelling reasons why to choose Texas San Antonio, Illinois over Georgia Clemson. And Kevin gave me one. We can start there. Maybe he's going to go with a goatee. I don't know. He's done that on occasion since he's been in the NFL.
He should go with the Ryan Day beard. We'd have to probably put some just for men in there or something like that to get the darkness. Not that Ryan Day does that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying Brett Bielema would have to go darker.
Whenever I have to write a story specifically about Ryan Day that goes to his age or whatever, and I sit there and I look at how much younger he is than me, I get all pissed off. I'm like, God darn kids.
Well, it's only going to get worse. It's only going to get worse as we get older. Yeah, now we're seeing, players' sons play at the professional level. We see that all the time now, and I'm constantly saying, seriously, Dante Bichette's son's playing in the big leagues. But in regards to these matchups in week one, well, first of all, I'm going to push back on Tony. I guess that's why I'm here from time to time. West Virginia was number 1 in the nation in pass defense last year. They played a little defense there in the Big 12, maybe.
Now, if you can stop Kansas, you can stop anybody. You're right.
They held that Army passing attack in the bowl game, so that certainly didn't have anything to do with that number either. So, regardless, I am going to extend on Kevin's point because he brought up Graham Mertz, and I think after that week 1 showing against Illinois, everybody was just goo goo gaga over Graham Mertz, and rightfully so. When you come in as a 5-star and then you throw 5 touchdowns and go 20 for 21 against anybody, then everybody just kind of like checked out the rest of the year and didn't necessarily keep track of him. But Wisconsin only scored 1 score. They scored less than 10 points against 3 decent opponents and had trouble scoring the ball. And then on the flip side, who I consider to be the chief rival to them competing for the division championship, Spencer Petras, got off to a bad start, looked awful the first few weeks, got better as they went along, and I actually outplayed Graham Mertz head-to-head in winning by 21 points. So Iowa, Wisconsin's going to be, for me, they're the 2 teams to beat. I'm not going to get lulled in any kind of Nebraska craziness like I did last year at the last second after I touted Iowa, Wisconsin as the 2 best teams in the division the entire summer. And then I pulled the trigger on Nebraska at the last second. But
go ahead. Wisconsin has more around them for Mertz now than Petras does with Iowa, doesn't he? I think a lot of that depends on Jalen Berger, the running back at Wisconsin as well. If he can be the Badger running back, because they didn't have that last year, and I think clearly it showed. And it's just strange when they don't have somebody who can go for 1,400 yards, because they show up with absolute nobodies as redshirt freshmen, like a PJ Hill, whatever, 10 years ago, and it's just somebody every new. And then Jonathan Taylor shows up as a true freshman, and they didn't have that last year. And I think they've got some receiver talent. I don't know what's waiting in the wings at Iowa. They always have stuff, a 4-star, 3-star former quarterback who is now a tight end, runs a 4.28. He's 6'8", 260.
I don't know if Abdul Hodge is walking through that door, Chad Greenway. I mean, some of those Iowa teams around then were, then again, I'm not discounting the last time Ohio State went to Iowa City, and I won't say anything else about that game, but there are some years where Iowa is pretty deep with talent. I mean, granted, they're all from Iowa or somewhere in the middle of nowhere, I guess, Iowa. And, just monsters or whatever. But I don't know if the roster is going to be filled with those guys. But, 39-time all Big Ten coach Kirk Ferentz just seems to do a good job with less.
Yes, he does. 2 quick items before I let you guys go. Nate the Great asked a question, then he hit up the live chat about 18 times after that to say, dang, they're not answering my question. So Nate's got an interesting one here, if I'm using the proper term. Tell me the top 4 bowl rivals for Ohio State. Well, to me, I don't really understand the question, but I'm going to go USC, and USC historically.
Yes.
They met in the Rose Bowl a zillion times, and that was the matchup everyone wanted to see typically every year in the 60s, 70s, and into the 80s. So I'll say USC and pretty much nobody else.
Don't you think Clemson is the right answer, though?
Now,
and Alabama.
Okay.
That's the today answer is Clemson. I mean, and
I've never seen Ohio State and USC in a game that I would remember in a bowl game, and I'm in my upper 20s.
I mean, there's certainly. I mean, I think you just could say Ohio State versus the SEC or whatever, just based on a long stretch of futility, and then they broke through a little bit, and then the man tried to take away the 2010 game against Arkansas or whatever, and whatnot. But yeah, it's easy to sit there and say that it's Clemson and Alabama, but the first team that came to my mind, and I was going to give the exact same answer that Mark did. I was just going to say USC 4 times.
Yeah, I mean, over the course of history, they played USC a bunch, in the Rose Bowl, and they did play them in that one Cotton Bowl, I guess, down in Dallas here a few years ago, which was kind of a weird thing for Ohio State USC to play in Dallas. But it was well attended, and people, received it pretty well down there. So I don't know. I agree. I think it's Clemson and Alabama. Anytime you could put any of those three teams, two of those three teams on a field together, I think you got some type of magical matchup that really means something. And they're the three hottest commodities in college football. I know it's fatigue for the rest of the nation, but if you want to change that, then Georgia, Oklahoma, somebody's going to have to knock them off at some point. And haven't seen anybody capable of doing it here in recent years.
I will also say it's unfortunate that Ohio State can't get back to their rivalry, their bowl rivalry with South Carolina, but they've just been too good. So maybe one day they can get back to the Outback Bowl or whatever it's going to be called by then, and they can play some South Carolina in a bowl game.
Yeah,
Wouldn't
Lou
that be
Holtz was
great?
difficult to deal with. All right, and one last note, because people are always asking about this. Any recent rumblings, news, anything concerning JTT? And, of course, it's Oregon, Washington, Ohio State, Alabama, and I'm hearing even USC possibly.
Yeah, our intel has him visiting Ohio State the weekend of the 17th,
Something like
thereabouts, and so he's going to have other visits surrounding that, and not coinciding. Obviously, he can only be in one place at a time. But yeah, that's all. Arrangements are being made. I don't know that they've announced anything yet, but it's going to be happening next 2, 3, 4 weeks. He's going to be all over the place, and a lot of people are going to be trying to talk to him, but he doesn't like talking to anybody, or almost anybody. But in terms of leanings, I think no news is the same. I think Ohio State feels good, but they could feel better if he'd actually enroll.
Right.
Yeah, and I
Steve?
think that the notable thing on this is he's taking visits the first part of July. And I'm not sure where that leaves him in terms of getting into wherever he's going for a summer program. Of course, then it'll be 3 weeks from the start of in camp. So I guess he's not concerned about that. So I think this kind of whittles down the likelihood he's going to make a major impact this year on the field. But maybe he is a freak. I don't know. Guess we'll know soon enough. Who knows?
All right, for Steve Hellwagon, who has closed the show appropriately, Bucknuts 247 Sports, Kevin Noon, Buckeye Grove on Rivals, and Tony Gerdeman, of course, from Buckeye Scoop. Mark Rogers, the voice of college football. Thank you so much for joining our Ohio State show that these guys make possible every week. Boys, it's been a good time. We appreciate it.
See you Wednesday.